Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What is your creepiest true story? I have exploding head syndrome. Take a minute to Google it if you like. My understanding of it is it's a seizure in the auditory bits of your brain that cause perception of a giant f***ing noise like an explosion or a car crash. It usually comes on right at sleep onset when I'm super tired. Before I knew what the FCK it was, I'd already learned to just ignore super loud noises and go to sleep. One day I had a real bad bout of the noises and was getting frustrated at not being able to sleep and started screaming obscenities every time I woke up. I went to check my cameras, was living in a super high crime area, best $200 I ever spent, and apparently the burglar kicked in the door, and I immediately screamed "Motherfucker, not again." And he bolted back out the door. Had a guy knock on my front door in the middle of the day and kept hiding off to the side so I couldn't see who it was. Yelled loudly that I was calling the cops and got a good look at his van as he drove off. Reported it later that week. Van and dude were in the news. As a serial killer finally arrested, I almost opened the damn door to yell at him in the face. Back in high school, I was on antidepressants. I was receiving help from my family doctor rather than a psychiatrist. There's generally a 1 to 2 week transition period where you have some undesirable side effects, usually nothing too major though. I was home alone taking a bath, trying to relax. Better check your closet. I tried to forget about it, but I was close to having an anxiety attack at that point and got out, wrapped myself in a towel, and warily checked the linen closet right outside the bathroom. After feeling a huge wave of relief that nothing was actually there, I hear the creepy voice emit this evil, demonic-like laugh fading off into the distance. Once I started seeing an actual psychiatrist, they took me off that med real f***ing quick, because apparently it can cause hallucinations. Went camping with family. Me and one of my cousins were at the pool and saw a guy in the bottom of the pool and said, "God, that guy's over there for some time. Is he dead?" He was. I was working as a waitress at a bar in the city, and this guy got overserved and was being pretty rowdy. He had grabbed my arm and tried pulling me over to him, so we cut him off and sent him on his way. As I was locking up the patio maybe an hour later, he wanders up to the edge from the parking lot, seemingly sobered up a bit. I was smoking as I worked and he called over to me and asked to bum a cigarette. I was like, sure, I'm not a huge dick. I flipped out and leveraged my foot against the railing to get out of his grasp and booked it inside. I sat at a nearby Waffle House until morning, paranoid he was going to try and follow me home or something. Probably just a drunk a hole trying to get his rocks off on scaring a teenage girl, but goddamn it worked. Back in 3rd grade I was spending the night over at my best friend's house when his older sister coerced us into playing Bloody Mary sometime after midnight. Eventually my turn comes and I manage to utter the words at the mirror and leave the bathroom only a little lot scared. I go to wake my friend up, we were sharing his bed, and he is gone. I freak the FCK out and hide under the sheets until morning and then work up the courage to tell his parents that Bloody Mary took him. Turns out the a-hole got scared in the middle of the night and slept with his parents. When I was in high school I had a huge crush, a guy a couple years older than me. He was on the boys' basketball team and I was on the girls' team. I would always try to get him to play basketball with me at our town's outdoor basketball court. He usually declined. I thought it was weird he wanted to play basketball in the middle of night in winter, so I had my friend come with. She got bored quickly and he was being really flirty with me, so I agreed she could leave. He assured her he would drive me back to her house. I was spending the night there. We get in his car and he tells me he has to warm the car up before we can go. He's on his phone for about 10 minutes and we are sitting there in silence. Out of nowhere he starts telling me about his sexual fetishes and how he gets off on physically causing other people pain. I'm starting to get uncomfortable at this point and ask if we can leave. He pulls out of the parking lot and starts driving the opposite direction of my friend's house. We lived in a small town and he drives about 5 miles out of town and turns on a gravel road. He then tells me I seem like the type of girl who would like being submissive to a bunch of men, and he wouldn't even have to make me beg for it. So I'm getting really freaked out and scared at this point. I'm looking for my cell phone and remembered I had left it at my friend's house to charge. I'm finally able to get my hands on his phone when he stops at the shack. I'm in the middle of nowhere. He isn't aware that I have his phone at this point and tells me to get out of the car because his friends are waiting inside and we don't want to make them mad. He looks really shocked and then starts laughing hysterically. He tried to convince me this was all a big joke and he wanted to see how I would react. I held his phone with 911 ready to go the entire ride back to my friends. I was 15 years old and should have called the cops, but I was young and dumb. Once there was a barnacle so ugly that everyone died. The end. Many years ago, I lived in a big, old, 3-story house that had a room on the middle level that we converted into an office. I used to write financial reports late at night that were published early the next morning. The office had a few computers and my toddler son had been playing on one of them for most of the evening, right up until I finished my work at around 9 p.m. By then he had fallen asleep, so I switched off his monitor, scooped him up and took him to bed, flicking off the light as I left. For the next couple of hours I relaxed in another room watching TV with my wife. She went to bed around 11 p.m., and at midnight I decided to do the same. I realized I'd left a window open in the office, so I went in there to close it. The house was silent, and the room was pitch black dark and ice cold when I walked in. Colder than it should have been for the time of the year, even with the window open. I paused for a moment in the center of the room to think about this, and then it happened. Knock knock knock, something was tapping on the glass. But it wasn't the random tappings of a bird or another kind of animal, it was completely uniform. Knock knock knock. By now I was already feeling on edge. Then, something happened that chilled me to the core. Because out of the corner of the room, to my right, and from the darkness, a high-pitched, almost squeaky voice began to speak quite loudly. "I can see you." I froze on the spot. My blood went cold. My bowels are prepared for evacuation. My God, I thought, I never wrote that book. Any book. It spoke again, but with greater emphasis on that all-important word, "I can see you." I determined that I was almost certainly iffed, so I figured, what the hell? I turned slowly to my right and walked into the darkness, until I finally reached my son's computer. Nothing there but an empty chair. But no talking now. Just silence. A horrible silence. Carefully, I reached over and switched on the monitor. The screen brightened, and there it was, something red, and horrible. Once again it tapped on the glass. It was F-king Elmo from my kid's Sesame Street game. Background: it's after midnight, I'm the only one up in the house, there's 3 feet of snow outside, and we're probably going to lose power any minute. Me, let's read the creepy thread and not sleep until Wednesday. Being from the Navajo Nation, I have seen a lot of crazy shit. Anyone not from here is most likely not to believe me. I have stories about skinwalkers, Kachina dolls coming to life, Bigfoot, werewolves, and some type of winged beast, but I think the most creepy is one of my skinwalker stories. So this story takes place in the early 2000s when I was a teenager. My cousin had just had a baby and her husband was called out for a job that would take a couple of weeks. My cousin asked if I would stay with her for the 2 weeks to help her with the baby/work around the house. At night we would hear someone knocking on different sides of the trailer. Keep in mind the nearest neighbor was about 5 miles away. This continued for 3 nights in a row. The 4th night is when things take a turn for the worst. The night starts with the knocking, but it progresses to scratching. Worried that someone was trying to break in, I summoned the courage to go outside and confront whatever/whoever was messing with us. I only caught a shadow of whatever it was as it ran behind the trailer. It is so fast I could not believe it. As I chase it to the front of the trailer, it runs through the clothesline. This is where it gets even crazier. It ran towards the utility post and climbs up it, clutching something in its hands, and begins the most airy laugh I have ever heard. My cousin was inside holding the baby. I run to the window and look, and to my amazement it had disappeared. I run inside and tell my cousin it is gone. Needless to say, we didn't sleep well for the rest of the night. The next morning I go outside and look at the window where I had last seen it. I look at the ground and see bare footprints, however these were no ordinary footprints. The best way I can describe it was a human footprint with claws, like a dog or wolf. It was my niece's tiny little shirt. It goes without saying we spent the next few days in the safety of my mother's home off the res. Oh, man. I love these threads. Movies and stuff don't scare me, but for the past few weeks I have been reading these true creepy story threads at night in the dark in my bed, and they scare the FCK out of me. Anyways, continue. These kids at my primary school were in the showers playing a trick where they would push you under a hot shower to burn you. One of the kids fiddled with the water system to make it extremely hot and tricked a kid to come close enough so he could push him under. The kids responsible didn't get any discipline afterwards because the mother of the victim was quite timid and never pushed the issue with the school. Those kids got off scot-free and are grown adults now. When I was a little girl, I was playing on the beach by myself. This was pretty normal as my family owned a condo that sat directly on the beachfront. I got bored, decided it was time to go home and started walking back towards my place. I immediately got a creepy vibe but decided to just walk by him anyways. As I did, he looked directly at me and screamed, "I am going to screw you." I ran all the way back home as quickly as I could and of course told my mom what happened. I had to ask her what screw meant. I was at home alone playing video games when I heard a thump upstairs, so I went to see if anything fell over, and nothing had. I checked the roof and attic for raccoons, nothing. Soon after, something tapped on my bedroom window, which was 30+ feet up with no plants outside, so I jumped out of the shower, grabbed my machete from my room, and searched the house. Again, nothing. All the doors and windows were still locked. Later, I went to bed. I described it to my dad and he said he saw the same apparition. The strange noises went on for weeks. I have never believed in the paranormal, but these experiences made me question that. I live in a small cul-de-sac in the middle of nowhere. The next nearest neighborhood is over 4 miles away. One night a few years ago we got over 1.5 feet of snow overnight. So far from main roads and on the weekend I knew our roads will be remaining plowed for quite some time. I looked and saw that they came from my neighbor's side and thought that one of their more delinquent kids played a joke as my sledding tube on the railing was popped. I decided I'd wait till later as it was early to call their parents. I immediately called her and told her I have an idea. I called the first house on the entrance and told him what was going on. He went and checked and sure enough they were there too. Everyone started calling everyone else. I called the family at the far end and they told me there was none there. She called the woman that lives next to the end house. She said that there were footprints that led to her door, but none led away. We already called the police by this point, but now we called them back and said that it's an emergency now. They told us the roads are still all unplowed and they can't send a plow truck to clear the way as they are a privately owned company. He came and she left. We put up one guy's live feed motion recording hunting cameras facing all exits. Nothing came out. Around 7 p.m. a plow truck came as well as 3 cop cars. The couple she was staying with and her went to her house and stood in the doorway as the police searched. They found nothing. 2 of the cops went into the basement again. This time only one came up. He took her to the side room and we could hear hysterical crying. By now we are all out there. Me and a few of the other guys started towards the door when several police confronted us. A few minutes later a scruffy man screaming and kicking came out in cuffs and was led away. In his little camp out they found blankets she just cleaned and put away in the room next to hers. She stayed in other people's houses for a long time before going back. Even then she wouldn't stay alone. She sold the house the next summer. He turned out to be a thrill-seeking junkie who was on probation for assault against a family member. We all were called as witnesses in the case and he took some electronics from her basement. Couldn't get him on that since he never left with the stuff. It was about 4 months of court, and that is why you always make sure you lock your doors. I remember walking home and taking a shortcut across the train bridge. I was a quarter way down the bridge. I saw someone start walking from the other side. I was slightly creeped out as it wasn't a high traffic area. I was about halfway across the bridge when I put a smoke in my mouth. As I got closer to the other person I remember asking him for a light. Without looking up or saying anything he reached up to my face and he lit it with the tip of his finger. I remember not sleeping that night. On the plus side, it's been almost 20 years and I haven't smoked since. So this actually happened pretty recently and I hope I can properly do this story justice. This happened the weekend before Christmas. So a few details to set up the scene. When you walk down the stairs of my house you can see the front door at about the last 2 steps. Anyways, me and my buddy are up in my room because I keep my good beer in my mini fridge because I can't trust anybody. On our way down the stairs we're just having normal, casual conversation about work or some shit. I completely freeze and my friend says, "What the FCK is that?" My first thought is that someone we know was knocking on the door but we didn't hear it being upstairs. After about 1 second of me focusing and I realized that is absolutely not the case. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share and we will see you in the next video.